It is an alert day. We're here with a Wave Weather Now update here on what has been a very warm, very humid, but not active until about now. Wave Weather Alert Day here, and we continue to track storms to our north, and now new thunderstorms out to our west. Hey, everybody, I'm Wave Meteorologist Ryan Hoke here alongside Kevin Harned. We're getting set up here for some severe weather coverage here live on Wave Weather Now, and of course on our social platforms like YouTube, Twitch, of course X, and Facebook. If you have a question or a comment, or if you have a storm report even, you can drop that as a comment on any one of our social media live streams here that you may be watching us on. We can see those aggregate right here on our computer screens and kind of relay those to folks at home. We've already got about 700 folks who are live with us this evening here on this Wave Weather Alert Day. You see out to our west, skies are darkening, starting to see some of the outlines of the storms that are blowing up near Crawford County at this time.
Yeah, which is a severe thunderstorm warning, and we've been tracking that storm. You'll see, we're going to walk you through the alert day. We're going to walk you through where the energy is, what we expect. The tornado watch is in place across our area until 3 a.m., and we're already starting to see severe thunderstorm warnings. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see when you look at that watch, some folks saying, well, what about sleep tonight? Are these storms going to come in and move out fairly fast? It's going to take some time. They're just now beginning. We're just at 8 o'clock. So you can see these thunderstorms. They're not in a line. These could start to rotate. The atmosphere is primed for that rotation. So when we look at this warning, you can see that it includes parts of Crawford, Davis, or Du Bois and Perry counties. That warning will go until 7:45 Central Time, so another half an hour is left on that warning. Hail up to 1 inch. And again, we're just going to be constantly looking at this storm, scanning it, seeing if there's any rotation, looking for how strong those winds are, and if there's any hail with these storms. The storms that are on their own and can tap into the environment that's around them will have the greatest success in terms of achieving the most severe potential. And that would mean the potential for large hail and the potential for some rotation. So that's what Ryan's looking at as we sort of scan that with the velocity scope.
Yeah, and this storm has shown just a little bit of rotation, but not a whole lot. Something else to keep in mind is that the radar site is in West Point, Kentucky, down where you see kind of that white ball there. And if we measure the distance from the radar, we're a good almost 40 miles away from the radar site there. So we're measuring the rotation and sort of the mid-levels of the storm, not the low levels where you would get a tornado. So often you will get mid-level and upper-level storm rotation, and it would never put down a tornado. So we're not quite in that sphere yet. Notice that on this warning, this is for parts of Crawford, Du Bois, and Perry here. This does include like St. Croix, that it does not list like tornado possible or considerable or observed or any of those kind of tags that can upgrade the warning. This is just the base severe thunderstorm warning, 60-mile-per-hour winds, 1-inch hail potential. And really, this thing has kind of a couple of cores to it. You can see one here that's a little closer to I-64 here. This is west of Sulphur, and then northwest of Sulphur, a second core. This may be trying to split apart. Should that happen, you would have two independent storm cells should they try to do that. That is just the most recent radar scan that is giving that appearance that there may be some sort of split that may try to take place there.
All right, we'll watch that storm. Let us walk you through the setup for tonight so you can best be prepared for for what's happening as the evening unfolds. And I see Ward Jollis walking through. He's got an eye on election returns coming in from the primaries of Indiana, so he may pop in when results come in to pass those along. Let's start by looking at our chances for not only precipitation, but some stronger thunderstorms. And you'll notice that after that 8-9 o'clock time frame, which we're in now, we're going to ramp it up. So these storms will continue to build right up until the midnight time frame, perhaps even just a little bit past, and then the thunderstorm chance moves to our east and comes way down. And then we've got dry time in the morning before we sort of hit the reset button and start it all over again. So when we look at our timeline with the two different storm threats, both for today and tomorrow, because both days are alert days, you'll see between now and about 2 a.m., may even be able to call it 3 now since the watch technically goes until 3. That would mean supercells are possible, and then we're going to see it sort of develop sort of a line. It won't be a continuous line like a squall line, but it will be a line with wind, hail, the tornado threat, the flood threat. That's between now and 3 a.m. Then we have some dry time overnight. This is our quiet period.
Yeah, so it's not going to be storming all night or anything like that. In fact, we'll get some patchy fog because of all the moisture in the air and the wet ground as we head toward early tomorrow morning. So tomorrow's kind of different than today. You know, today we started out with that line of storms. It was kind of weakening somewhat as it moved through. Tomorrow, we will not have that. As you wake up tomorrow morning, it will be dry. And really, we get in on this dry time until 3 p.m. Not the greatest setup, though, because when you have a day that starts off dry and continues to be dry through midday like that, that's just building up storm energy. And that is going to gather enough potential for severe weather after that 3 o'clock time frame tomorrow. I should say tomorrow's severe weather threat is caused by kind of a different set of fronts than the one today. So we'll be in what's called a different warm sector than today, slightly different setup, but two back-to-back severe weather setups in 48 hours here, Kev.
And probably not much of as much of a cap tomorrow.
Correct.
We're just now eroding that warm layer today.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's happening right now. That's sort of depleting, and the thunderstorms are now free to sort of take off, if you will. We get into those thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon between 3 p.m. and 10 p.m. So after the quiet time in the morning, if we see the sunshine tomorrow, that's a bad thing because that's adding the energy, that's adding the instability, a key ingredient in the formation of these strong storms tomorrow. And then we'll have to see where the warm front sets up, and that'll sort of be the focal point for the strongest possible supercells that may develop tomorrow. But let's get through tonight first. We have the instability. We had some sun today. It was limited for a while because we were capped because of the warmer air aloft, as well in the mid-levels, as well as the clouds that we held on to for just a little bit longer after that morning convection. That said, there's plenty of moisture. When we show you the dew points in a minute, you're going to see those have soared into the low to mid 70s. The wind shear is very strong. Two types of shear. As you go up into the atmosphere, you can get speed shear, but more importantly for tornadoes, you get the directional shear where we go up into the atmosphere with height, we change the speed, increase the speed with height, or change the direction with height. And that's what's happening. And we have lift because of obviously we have the fronts moving in.
Right. So those are the ingredients. So what threats will those ingredients provide? And you'll notice that these scales here are pretty high. We're talking wind and hail at a 4 out of 5. And again, this is, primarily tomorrow because that's kind of the higher threat of the 2 days here. The tornado threat is a 3 out of 5. We don't often do that. We usually keep that at a 1 or a 2 here. So this is one of those few times per year when the tornado threat here is elevated. And if there is to be a tornado, it does have the chance of being a strong EF2 plus tornado, and it could be long tracked. Flooding is also a concern with multiple rounds of rain. I will say, since we kind of missed some of the supercell round today, that flooding threat has gone down just a smidge, but it still could be a big problem, especially late tomorrow night. Turn around, don't drown, especially when you've got nighttime flooding. That could be some of the most dangerous that can happen across our area here.
When we talk about the severe threats, we coincide with the Storm Prediction Center just to keep everybody on the same page. So it's out of 5. Now, of course, we're in it now, so this isn't as useful, right? It's the enhanced risk area, 3 out of 5. What's more useful is the text that we've put on there. It's between now and about 2 a.m. that we have to pay close attention. Supercells and clusters of storms will be what we watch. All modes of precip or severe weather would be at play. Wind, hail, tornadoes, flooding. All right. So we'll just go past that. We want to make sure you stay safe. Obviously, this is one way. We're either going to be on the air, which means on Wave, or through our digital and streaming platforms, which is where we are now. Fire Stick, Roku, Wave Weather Now, all on our apps, Wave News app, Wave Weather app. We're out there on Twitch, YouTube, all of those platforms, including Twitter and Facebook. All right. Now, if we get into nonstop severe weather coverage, you're going to have to turn your TV on to Wave. That's where we are. Or you can watch on Wave Weather Now. But I can't promise we'll be on all of the social platforms just because we're not going to be in this room. We'll be in the studio. All right. Make sure you have the Wave Weather app. You can watch us there. NOAA Weather Radio. Don't count on the outdoor tornado sirens. They're for outdoor use only. Let's get into the weather setup, the ingredients. We hit the low 80s today. We're still at 80 degrees. That's a very warm push of air on those southerly winds. And those southerly winds are also transporting in plenty of moisture. And you see that with the current dew points in the low to mid 70s.
So what does that translate to on the radar? Well, of course, we've had not a whole lot of storm activity in our counties just yet. But as we zoom things in, you'll note that, of course, that severe thunderstorm warning continues for parts of Perry and Crawford County here. And that, again, is until 8:45 p.m. I'll zoom this over here. I will say this storm doesn't look as impressive as it once did. You can see it's lost that red core there. I backed up the radar a little bit. I'll put it in motion here. Actually, I'll back it up there. There we go. Now you can see it once again. So it's kind of losing some of its core. And if we break this down, you'll see the velocity here, which is the wind speeds detected by radar. There's nothing overtly alarming on this just yet, which is some good news for us. Hopefully that bodes well for about the next hour here. We can show you kind of a different view of that too, and it still isn't sniffing anything out. But let's look for hail, and you'll see that there is a bit of a storm core. This is near Doolittle Hills, Indiana at this time in northern Perry County. And if we look for the hail size on that, right now that 5-minute hail product that comes to us from the weather company isn't dumping out any sort of, big time hail concern, just because I think this storm is starting to kind of run its course.
It just canceled the warning.
Yeah, not shocking on that, given what the radar presentation that we saw. So that's the one storm. You'll see we have a few other downpours. There's one in Scottsburg now that went through Orange and Washington counties during the 7 o'clock hour. Now it's moving into Scottsburg. This is not severe. This is just a baby little downpour at this time, and really doesn't have much to show except for a little bit of rotation in it. But that's just because, Kevin, there's so much wind shear in the atmosphere today. Even a baby downpour like this will start to rotate at least a little bit.
Yeah, and the key point when you look at the radar is just realizing that the atmosphere is just now beginning to allow these storms to develop, right? All, from 4 o'clock through 8:30, where we are now, the atmosphere's been capped. There's been a lid that says, hey, no storms can even develop, even if they want to. They try to and fizzle out. So we're just now opening that door a little bit, and that will keep opening as we roll through the rest of this evening. So our thunderstorm chances will continue to climb. Now you can see, obviously, up around Indianapolis and points to the just south and east, they have tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings. Their cap eroded long ago. They've had thunderstorms much of the day up there and throughout the afternoon that have been severe. Obviously, we've got a tornado warning that looks like it's even been observed. I see the
let's query that here and see what's going on with that. That's going to be eastern Indiana, just east of Richmond there. And there it is, considerable radar indicated, but it does have that considerable damage tag on it. So that's hence the reason for the white outline of the upgrade there.
And there you see that. So we're watching those storms. Those will stay north of us and move into parts of Ohio. But what we'll have to watch will be storms back out to the west that develop along the cold front, and the ones that are popping now across the viewing area. Eventually, they have the ability to not only rotate, but become severe and have the potential for the large hail, the tornadoes, and the winds. So,
yeah, the zone I've circled there is kind of where we're going to be watching over the next several hours through about 2-3 o'clock in the morning. Any storms that form out there would move through our counties, and that's the reason why they issued that third tornado watch, or really that fourth tornado watch, I should say, across our counties, central Kentucky, southern Indiana there.
All right, let's thumb through this. I'll show you some of the fuel. Obviously, we're in what we call the warm sector. And if we go back a map, you'll see what that means. It's on the sort of backside of the warm front and ahead of the cold front. This is the warm sector. That's where we get the most unstable air. We've had some sunshine today. That has helped. It is a warm air mass with highs in the 80s. It's moist because we've put an influx of moisture with those southerly winds. The dew points have risen. With that, the cold front oftentimes sweeps through and helps to clear things out. What's going to happen tonight is not exactly that. While it will come through, it doesn't necessarily reset the atmosphere in terms of drying it out completely. All right. And that's important for tomorrow. So that's the setup. We're in the warm sector. We are primed for severe weather. We're at a time to where it won't be perhaps as intense as it would have been had it began in the afternoon, but we're still not out of the woods yet. So we can't let our guard down is the words on that. And here's why. We have CAPE, convective available potential energy. What this means is what energy is there in the atmosphere that if I can get the parcel to go up, will we wind up seeing the energy help that for the lack of a better term, environment support the storm. All right. So you need that energy. And we're looking at that in terms of joules per kilogram. This is what we call CAPE. Typically, if we saw anything over 1,000 or 1,500, that would be pretty decent.
But today we're seeing well over 2,000. So we have,
and in some cases, 3,000 and 4,000.
So more than double of what you need. So there's plenty of CAPE here. It's just today the warm air aloft has kind of capped it until about now. So that's why some of these storms are starting to pop in our area.
This is the STP, or the significant tornado parameter, and don't get scared by this, but we're looking at the loop over the last 3 hours, and you're going to notice that that is increasing, and that is hence the reason that the tornado watch has been issued. Is as we start to erode the cap, as we look at the elements that we need for severe weather, we've got the forcing with the cold front moving closer. We have the moisture because the dew points have surged on the southerly winds. We have the shear, both directional and more important, and that's the most important one, the directional shear. We also have the speed shear, but in combination with that, we have some instability. We have enough. That's that CAPE. That's the available energy needed for these storms. And consequently, you see that tornado parameter. It doesn't go all the way to the high side, but it reaches into the at least midpoint of our scale.
Yeah, once you get above a 1 or a 2 on that, that's when things, start to get eye-raising. We're looking for 3s and 4s here tonight and especially tomorrow. So this is the severe weather risk today. This is almost a moot point because it's happening now. You don't typically look at these things, when the event is going on. But just to give you a sense of scale here, we do have that 3 out of 5 enhanced risk areas closer to the Western Kentucky and Bluegrass Parkways and north of there. Let's zoom toward tomorrow real quick if we can here. And this is day 2 from the Storm Prediction Center. This is a big ol' enhanced risk here. It goes from just northeast of Dallas all the way through the Tennessee and lower Ohio valleys here. Kevin, there's been a lot of discussion today, not only amongst meteorologists and viewers, but the National Weather Service as well. Like, will they upgrade parts of this to a moderate risk? They're not going to do it tonight. This is for tomorrow. They would likely do it in the morning. If they're going to do it, look and see what environment's been left behind by tonight, how that warm sector is going to evolve tomorrow. Where is the warm front going to be tomorrow? That's a critical factor. If we had to draw where a moderate risk would be, it probably would be somewhere around here. We'll see how that goes, though. That's just an educated guess at this point. Not as important as what's going on tonight because we have some time to get through to tomorrow.
Yeah, and today wasn't quite the way we thought it would play out because of the capping that came in. A lot of that cloud cover held over, so we saw a brief break and then more clouds spilled in. Both of those, the mid-level cap and the clouds, really affected things today, and consequently that affects things for tomorrow. So how that lines up, still to be determined. When we look at the future cast, you're going to see how it plays out. Notice the individual cells. Those are supercells. Have the potential for large hail, rotation, tornadoes in the stronger ones. That takes us into the midnight hour. And then it starts to get a little bit more messy or clumped together, or clusters of storms. Then it becomes a heavy rainmaker, along with the fact that we could still see some strong storms or even severe weather in those clusters.
Yeah, so we don't have a setup where these can stay individualized supercells for more than like an hour or two. Eventually, they will merge here, kind of like they did up just south of Indianapolis. You know how that's kind of just a big old line mess. But even with the mergers, there will still be supercell structures embedded in them should these storms develop here. And that's where we would have the potential for large hail and tornadoes. So that's tonight. Let's go through tomorrow. So we start off tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. Things are quiet. You may look out your window and go, dang, it's foggy out here for day number 2. Yeah, that's what's going on because we've got a wet ground, calm-ish winds, and of course we'll have plenty of moisture in the air, the temperature getting down to the dew point. All the ingredients are there for a bit of fog tomorrow morning. and then the sun tries to come out in the afternoon.
Well, and if the fog isn't there and we don't have to even burn that off, that's even worse because then we're immediately starting to heat the atmosphere and throw in a bunch of instability. But even if it is there, our thought is that that will fade quickly and we'll be left with some sunshine for a period of time. Several hours of sun will be all we need to really warm things up between 9 a.m. and about 2 p.m. And then the clouds will start to billow in the afternoon, and then the thunderstorms form along the warm front. Where is the warm front? Question mark. We don't know exactly where that will set up. Right now, the Parkway is a good indication, and that's why Ryan mentioned that if we had to make an educated guess, that's where we would wind up seeing the moderate risk if they put one out. I'm still not sure they'll do that, but regardless, the supercells would form along that and lift to the north and off to the east. That would impact much of our viewing area, all right? And then we still have to wait the cold front to move in. So this takes us through the afternoon and early evening. There will be some dry time. Not everybody gets the severe weather. Many of us will get thunderstorms. And then we're into this clusters of storms that will be severe and move through late in the evening into the early overnight. And that, too, will pack a punch. This is a 2-day threat, the one that we're just now getting into now. That will take us until this watch expires at 3, and then we'll likely do it all again tomorrow. But tomorrow it starts probably a lot earlier. And again, banking on the fact that we destabilize earlier than we did today.
Right. So here's a snapshot of like 5 p.m., for instance, and you can see kind of that northwest to southeast, kind of warm front pushing toward the north and east. And that's why we get into this warm sector. And eventually that line of storms just pushes on through. So that's futurecast as we kind of put a, kind of a fine point, put a bow on this thing here. This is a storm chance graph for tomorrow night. Red bars equal severe chance. It's 100% chance of storms by around 6 p.m. And the reason for that is because we'll be in that warm sector. We'll be in the part of the warm sector kind of on the northern edge of it where it may be storming for quite some time here, and the coverage would be quite high as opposed to areas to our south where you get in kind of a dry slot of that warm sector. But again, it all depends on how far north the warm front gets. The farther south it is, the farther south the severe weather risk or the greatest severe weather risk would be. So if you're going to be cheering for something tomorrow, keep that warm front down in Tennessee. It's not good for folks along I-40, that's for sure, but that would make us a little bit more immune to some of the worst of the severe weather should this front kind of stay down to the south here. And of course, we talked about the risks earlier. So far, no moderate risk tomorrow. We'll see what they do with that. But 3 p.m. to 10 p.m., that's our best timing on the severe weather tomorrow. The reason the 3 o'clock start time is there is because that's basically when the warm front starts to move in, Kev.
Yeah, and that's what we'll have to watch. So we'll be tracking this all night long, tomorrow morning, sort of fine-tuning where we find that boundary. Even if the warm front sets up just to our south, if we break out with sun, that's going to be enough energy moving into where we would still be able to grow those storms vertically to see some pretty intense weather is our thinking. So tomorrow, likely a little more impactful than today may be. And it's going to last a little bit longer than what we expect today. I'm looking through, pardon me, looking down, but I've got to keep an eye on what's happening in Indiana as well.
Both of us, by the way.
And we do have
you get to the radar.
The actual tornado warnings for Indiana. There were a couple that were observed. One of those was in Rush County, and then another one that was observed was over in Shelby County.
Wow.
Those have been expired, but that wasn't too far from Greensburg and Shelbyville. That was moving east at 35. Again, this is all in Indiana, in the Indianapolis viewing area, but just north of our viewing area. So we're watching these storms in northern parts of Harrison County, central parts of Crawford County. They are not severe at this point, but they're continuing to grow. So we're seeing them pulse up and down a little bit as we wind up opening the atmosphere, if you will, as that cap starts to erode and the storms are freer to rise. The storms need to grow in height to get and maintain their energy. Okay. And we see some hail with this and some rotation showing up with the one across Crawford County. So that one is being watched very closely by the Weather Service and obviously us.
Right. And if I kind of move this away here and we draw on this, you can see just that little tiny hook shape right here. And that's where some of that rotation is barely visible on the radar, by the way. Again, these are just baby storms. And we've got a grand total of what looks like 5 lightning strikes, if I can read that small font there, over the last 10 minutes in these. So these are still just developing, as we were just talking about here. Louisville will not see these exact storms because these, if I put in motion the radar here, are tracking toward the north and east, kind of an east-northeast sort of motion. So maybe Prospect, Oldham County gets clipped. Downtown will see these storms across the river for certain. They'll make quite an appearance with a dark sky. Maybe you can see some low-hanging scud clouds that might look kind of ugly out that way, heading towards southern Indiana. But for now, these are not severe. But boy, I mean, up to our north, we were just talking about the observed tornado tags in Indiana today on some of these tornado warnings. Still 2 tornado warnings that are just south of Richmond, Indiana. This is south of the I-70 corridor there. And looks like Indianapolis is going to remove some of their counties from the tornado watch just because it's starting to pass through some of their area. But they're essentially going to be passing the baton to us at some point here tonight as those storms push out and these newer storms out to our west start to get going, should they get going. And you can see already near Mount Vernon, Illinois there, we've got a few more cells starting to go up there. And those would track into our counties and maybe clip up near Lawrence, Jackson, maybe just north of Du Bois there, should they continue on that track.
Obviously, we're coming up on almost 9 o'clock. The sun is setting, and it's going to be dark. So this poses a whole nother problem, one where we have nighttime threats of tornadoes. It makes it a little more dangerous. It makes people a little more anxious. People think that, gosh, I can't go to bed. It might keep you
tornado
up.
warning.
So we're going to have to go on the air.
Yep.
I'm going to get our crew, and we'll be.
And I'll shut this down, and I'll be in there with Kevin shortly here. But this is Crawford, Harrison, Meade, and Perry. Yep. Until looks like 9:15. So we'll be on the air. We'll be back here on Wave Weather Now shortly with tornado warning coverage from our other studio. Give us just a minute. Hold here. Keep watching. We'll be right back with that coverage. Give us a second.